So this is a talk I gave in April of 2016 at the Society for the Advancement of Social Studies, and the topic of the month was historical urban myths and legends. So this is the real, the fake, and the crazy, a historical guessing game. So I'm guessing most people have heard about Two Truths and a Lie, the game where you say three things, two of them are true, one of them is a lie. I'm known to be a little bit more duplicitous than that, so I'm going to switch it up and make this two lies and a truth. So two of the three historical facts that will be presented to you are completely false, and one of them is the truth. So here we go. The three are: John F. Kennedy once called himself a jelly donut in Germany, the inventor of the Segway died in a Segway crash, and there was a town in Japan called USA. So warning, there's some statistics content ahead. I went out before this presentation and actually canvassed some people on the internet. I wanted to see what people thought about this and which ones they thought were true and which ones they thought were false. So here are the results. So most people think John F. Kennedy did not call himself a jelly donut. It's pretty half and half about the Segway myth, and most people do think that there is a town in Japan called USA or USA. So let's see what the results are. And in all cases, the majority got it right. But then I was a little more curious to see what people's opinions were for the total. So John F. Kennedy and the Segway are both lies, and the Japan myth is actually the truth. When you look at everybody's answers, only 23.5% of people actually got all three correct, which means most people didn't understand the rules of the game, and they said that there were two truths and one lie. It's two lies, one truth. Oh well. So here we go. These are the results. So let's get to the bottom of this. Where do these urban myths and legends even come from? So number one, the jelly donut. It's 1963 Berlin, peak of the Cold War. The world is poised for nuclear destruction. We have East Germany surrounding completely the capital, Berlin, and we have within Berlin, East and West Berlin. This is pretty well-known historical stuff. And people really did not want to hang around in East Berlin. They were fleeing in droves over to the West Berlin, and then from there out to West Germany. So the East Germans had an idea. They're going to build a wall, the biggest wall you ever did see. It's going to be huge. So they start building the Berlin Wall in 1961. It goes up in August. And it is under these circumstances that John F. Kennedy comes to Berlin in 1963 to give his famous address to reassure the people of East Berlin that the United States is looking out for them. And it is in this speech, during this speech, that he says, "Ich bin ein Berliner." So it turns out that a Berliner in Berlin is a type of jelly-filled pastry. So a bunch of grammar Nazis got together and criticized this this turn of phrase. The issue that they're pointing out is that the ein in this phrase is this indefinite article, and I'm no expert on German grammar, but apparently this is not how you're supposed to say it when you're saying I'm a Berliner, I'm from Berlin. You would just see Ich bin Berliner. If you're saying Ich bin ein Berliner, in this case the grammar indicates that it's a jelly donut. It turns out this is not true. The ein does not equate the Berliner to the jelly donut pastry. So from the History Channel, we see that no self-respecting West Berliner listening to that speech would have confused Kennedy's words. It's quite obvious what the intent was.
2,000 years ago, the proudest boast was Civis Romanus Sum. Today, in the world of freedom, the proudest boast is Ich bin ein Berliner. I appreciate my interpreter translating my German.
So, as you can hear before we jump into the segue, there was some laughter that accompanied Kennedy's speech, but it was made after the Ich bin ein Berliner, and he's commenting on his appreciation for his German translator, which got some laughs from the crowd. But they weren't laughing at his Berliner comments, so this is clearly a historical myth. So next up, the segue. So I'm pretty sure we're all familiar with segways. In major tourist areas, the bane of my existence, for sure. I'm sure the bane of your existence is as well. So the story goes that one day the inventor of the Segway was driving around on a Segway. He lost control and he fell off a cliff and died. That's not true. However, somebody did fall off a cliff on a Segway. It just wasn't the inventor, Dean Kamen, of famous robotics fame. He's still working up in New Hampshire, somewhere like that, New England, making robots all the time. So he's still with us, thank God. It was this guy, James Heselden. So James Heselden, it was a British investor, and he wasn't the inventor of the Segway, but he was the owner of the company. He owned the controlling stake in the Segway Corporation. So he was out walking his dog one day on his Segway. Why, I couldn't tell you. But he was going along the cliff. He had swerved out of the way to avoid somebody walking in the other direction, and he fell down a pretty steep hill to his death. So the root cause of this myth and how Dean Kamen got ripped up in all of this and was alleged to be, killed on his Segway, we can trace it back to Stephen Hoffer from AOL News. And what he did was, in the reporting of the story where James Heselden was killed by his Segway, he went on to list other great inventors who were killed by their creations, including Jack Daniels, who drank himself to death, and Franz Rehkelt, who invented the wingsuit and killed himself in the process of trying to prove that. These people actually invented their product, though, unlike James Heselden. So this leads to this immense confusion of Segway inventor dies in Segway crash. This did not happen. This was not the headline. It was this: Segway owner dies in Segway crash. And this is actually the exact article from the Times. So thank God, Dean Kamen still with us, still doing robotics, still rocking the jeans look. Unfortunately, Stephen Heselden is no longer with us. So that leaves USA Japan. So the myth with USA Japan, there it is, for the record, it's real, is that following World War II, a economically feeble and occupied Japan is looking for a way to get back at the United States. Their industry is utterly destroyed, and they go from making aircraft carriers and advanced industrial tools to cheap little plastic tchotchkes. So, the myth goes that there was some other town, some name in this location of USA with some other Japanese name, and in order to fool U.S. consumers into buying plastic tchotchkes made from Japan, their recently defeated arch rival, they changed the name to USA, or USA, so that when products were stamped and labeled, they would see made in USA as opposed to made in Japan. For the record, this is what USA actually looks like. It's a very ancient town. It's been called USA since at least the medieval Japanese era. So this is completely made up. It's also worth noting that things are stamped made in Japan, not made in the town in Japan that they come from. So this was never going to happen, seeing this and a product coming from Japan. This also assumes that these ships coming from another country into the United States would get to customs and they wouldn't, why would a ship be coming from the United States to the United States with products to deliver? So clearly this is a myth. So there you have it. The Jelly Donut, the Segway, and USA Japan. 2 lies, 1 truth, lots of history. Thanks.